Henry gripped the edge of the table as Alexander's words hit him like a freight train. "I've known about your secret for years, Henry, and I need you to know that loving a man doesn't make you less of a father." The cozy cafe in downtown Chicago hummed with the usual evening chatter, but Henry's world narrowed to the man sitting across from him, the one his best friend Mike had sworn was perfect for a blind date. He had shown up expecting a woman named Alex, someone warm and easy to talk to, maybe a teacher or a graphic designer who could understand the quiet grief of raising a 9-year-old son alone. Instead, he faced Alexander, tall and composed in a crisp navy button-down, his dark eyes steady and kind, an architect who had apparently been carrying this truth like a hidden letter for far too long. Henry's mouth went dry. At 35, he was the guy everyone counted on. Accountant by day, soccer coach on weekends, the widowed dad who kept Liam's lunchbox stocked and his nightmares at bay since Sarah's car accident 3 years earlier. Straight, reliable, normal. The word secret landed like a slap. "This has to be some kind of mistake," he managed, voice low and tight. "Mike said you were." "I thought you were." He couldn't finish the sentence. Alexander leaned forward slightly, the golden hour light from the street windows catching the faint stubble on his jaw. "I know this is a shock. I asked Mike to set it up because I couldn't keep pretending I didn't see you the way I do. At Liam's soccer game last spring, when you were cheering from the sidelines, something clicked. I recognized that look in your eyes because I've worn it myself." Henry pushed his chair back an inch, heart hammering against his ribs. Memories he had buried for decades flickered uninvited. Stolen glances in high school locker rooms, the way his chest tightened around certain guys in college, the relief when Sarah's laugh made everything feel safe and simple. He had loved her, truly. But this was different. Dangerous. "I have a son," he said, the words coming out sharper than he meant. "Liam needs stability, not whatever this is." Alexander didn't flinch. "I have a nephew the same age. I understand exactly what you're protecting. But I'm not here to blow up your life, Henry. I'm here because I think you deserve to stop hiding from yourself." The cafe door chimed as new customers entered, bringing in the crisp October air, and Henry suddenly felt exposed, as if every patron could read the panic on his face. He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his untouched coffee. "I can't do this." Outside on the sidewalk, the city lights blurred through the sudden sting in his eyes. He walked fast toward the L train, phone buzzing with a text from Mike. "How's it going with Alex?" Henry didn't reply. That night, after tucking Liam into bed and reading the same chapter of Harry Potter for the 3rd time, he sat on the edge of his own mattress staring at the family photo on the nightstand. Sarah smiled back at him, bright and trusting. "What would you say if you knew?" he whispered to the empty room. Sleep refused to come. The next morning at the office, numbers blurred on his screen. His coworker Jenna asked if he was okay, and he forced a laugh, blaming allergies. But the confession replayed on loop. Alexander hadn't pushed, hadn't demanded anything. Just laid the truth between them like an open hand. By lunch, Henry found himself typing the man's name into a search bar. Alexander Rivera, lead architect at a respected downtown firm, photos of sleek modern buildings, and a warm smile at charity events. No wife, no kids, no pretense. Henry closed the tab quickly, ashamed of the curiosity that felt like betrayal. That evening, Liam bounded through the door after school, backpack swinging, full of stories about a science project and the new kid on the soccer team. Henry listened, ruffled his son's hair, and wondered how long he could keep pretending the ground under their feet hadn't shifted. Mike called after dinner. "Dude, you ghosted me. Was Alex that bad?" Henry hesitated, then said, "He's a guy, Mike." Silence stretched. "Yeah, I know. Thought it might be good for you." Henry's stomach dropped. "You knew." "I suspected. You've been different since Sarah." "Figured maybe." Henry hung up before he could hear more. Alone in the kitchen, he poured a glass of water and stared at his reflection in the dark window. The man looking back seemed like a stranger now, someone carrying a question he had spent his whole life refusing to ask. By the weekend, the weight of Alexander's words had settled into a constant hum beneath Henry's skin. Liam had a soccer game Saturday morning, and Henry stood on the sidelines in his usual windbreaker, clipboard in hand, calling out encouragement. But his eyes kept drifting to the bleachers where parents chatted and sipped coffee. He half expected to see Alexander there, though he knew that was ridiculous. After the game, Liam ran up, cheeks flushed with victory, and Henry hugged him tight, breathing in the familiar scent of grass and sweat. "You were awesome, buddy." On the drive home, Liam chattered about wanting to try ice skating next weekend. Henry nodded automatically, mind elsewhere. That afternoon, he found himself driving past the cafe where the blind date had imploded. He pulled over without thinking, sat in the car for 10 minutes, then dialed the number Alexander had slipped him before he bolted. It rang twice. "Henry." Alexander's voice was calm, surprised but warm. "I wasn't sure you'd call." "Neither was I." They met at a different park this time, neutral ground near the lake. Autumn leaves crunched under their shoes as they walked the path, hands in pockets, keeping a careful distance. Alexander didn't repeat the confession. Instead, he asked about Liam's school, about Henry's job, about the little things that made a life. Henry answered carefully at first, then found the words coming easier. "Sarah used to say I overthink everything," he admitted. "She was right." Alexander smiled faintly. "Sounds like she knew you well." The mention of his late wife should have felt like a wall, but instead it opened a door. Henry talked about the accident, the months of numbness, the way Liam still asked for her at bedtime sometimes. Alexander listened without interrupting, and for the first time in years Henry felt seen beyond the role of grieving husband and single father. That night Henry lay awake replaying the conversation. No pressure, no ultimatums, just two men talking like friends. Yet every laugh they shared carried an undercurrent that made his pulse quicken. The next week dragged at work. A big audit loomed, and his boss praised his focus while Henry felt anything but. During lunch, he caught himself smiling at a text from Alexander suggesting they grab coffee again. Nothing heavy, just talk. He typed back yes before he could second-guess. Their second meeting stretched into 3 hours. Alexander shared stories of growing up in a large Filipino-American family, the quiet acceptance when he came out at 20, the way his mother still set an extra plate at holidays, just in case. Henry listened and felt a pang of envy mixed with fear. "My parents are traditional," he said finally. "They think Liam needs a mother figure eventually." Alexander nodded. "I get that pressure. But kids are tougher than we give them credit for." The words lingered. On the train home, Henry watched families through the windows and wondered what Liam would say if he ever knew. The thought terrified him, yet it also sparked something small and warm he hadn't felt in years. Thanksgiving arrived with its usual chaos. Henry's parents drove in from the suburbs, his mother already planning the menu and asking pointed questions about whether he was seeing anyone nice. Henry dodged as best he could, helping Liam set the table while his father talked football. The meal was loud and familiar, but every time conversation turned to dating, Henry felt Alexander's name on the tip of his tongue like a secret he wasn't ready to share. After pie, his mother pulled him aside in the kitchen. "You're still young, honey. Liam needs a complete family." The words stung more than usual. That night, he texted Alexander a simple, "Happy Thanksgiving." The reply came quickly. A photo of a crowded family table and the words, "Same to you. Thinking of you." Henry stared at the message longer than he should have. The following Monday, everything shifted again. At work, Jenna cornered him by the copier. "You seem different lately. Happier." Before he could answer, Mike showed up unannounced for lunch. They grabbed sandwiches at a nearby deli, and Mike wasted no time. "Look, I didn't mean to spring the blind date on you like that. But Alexander's a good guy, and I've seen how you light up when you talk about him." Henry nearly choked on his coffee. "It's not that simple." Mike leaned in. "Why not? Sarah wouldn't want you alone forever. And Liam, kids adapt." The conversation circled for an hour, Mike pushing gently, Henry resisting with every excuse he could find. The job, the neighbors, the school parents who already whispered about the single dad. By the time he returned to his desk, his hands were shaking. That evening he met Alexander at a quiet bookstore cafe. They browsed shelves first, shoulders brushing once by accident, and Henry didn't pull away. Over tea, Alexander asked the question Henry had been dreading. "Are you ashamed of how you feel?" Henry looked down at his cup. "I'm scared. For Liam. For everything I've built." Alexander reached across the table, fingers stopping just short of Henry's hand. "Fear makes sense. But hiding forever? That costs more than you think." The weeks that followed blurred into a careful dance. They texted daily, met for walks, shared meals. Henry learned Alexander's favorite songs, the way he took his coffee, the quiet strength that came from years of living openly. In return, Alexander saw the cracks in Henry's armor, the late-night worry about being enough for Liam, the guilt that sometimes still woke him at 3 a.m. One Saturday they took Liam to the museum without labeling it a date. Liam chattered nonstop about dinosaurs, completely at ease with Alexander's easy humor. Watching them together, Henry felt something crack open inside his chest, equal parts hope and terror. That night after Liam was asleep, Henry stood on his small balcony, city lights stretching below, and whispered the words he had never said aloud. "I think I'm gay." The admission hung in the cold air, small and enormous at the same time. Christmas lights twinkled along Michigan Avenue, but inside Henry's apartment the atmosphere grew tense. His mother called twice that week asking why he seemed distracted. He blamed work. Truth was, the growing closeness with Alexander had started to feel impossible to hide. They had kissed once, a soft, hesitant brush of lips outside Alexander's building after a movie, and Henry had pulled back not from disgust but from the sheer intensity of feeling alive again. "I need time," he had whispered. Alexander had nodded, patient as always. "I'm not going anywhere." The new year brought the first real test. At Liam's school holiday concert, Henry sat in the auditorium, Alexander 2 rows behind at Henry's quiet invitation. During intermission, a fellow parent, Mrs. Hargrove, spotted them talking in the lobby. Her smile tightened. "New friend?" The question dripped with curiosity. Henry introduced Alexander as a friend of the family. But the lie tasted bitter. Later that night, Liam asked, "Is Alex your boyfriend?" The innocence in his son's voice nearly undid him. Henry knelt down. "Would that be okay with you?" Liam shrugged, 9 years old and wiser than he should be. "As long as he likes soccer." The simple acceptance cracked something deep inside Henry. He called Alexander at midnight, voice thick. "Liam knows. Sort of." The relief in Alexander's reply carried across the line like a lifeline. But acceptance at home didn't extend everywhere. At work, the rumor mill started turning after Jenna saw them having lunch together downtown. Whispers followed Henry to the break room. His boss pulled him aside one Friday, not unkind but direct. "Personal life is personal, but clients talk. Just keep it professional." The warning landed like a stone in his stomach. That weekend he and Alexander argued for the first time. Alexander wanted to attend Liam's next game openly. Henry wanted to wait. "I'm not ashamed of you," Henry said, frustration rising. "I'm protecting my son." Alexander's eyes flashed. "By hiding me? That's not protection, that's fear." They parted on uneasy terms. Henry drove home replaying every word, wondering if he was making the same mistake he had made for 35 years, choosing safety over truth. His mother sensed the distance during their weekly call. "Is something wrong, honey? You sound like you're carrying the world," he almost told her. Instead, he changed the subject to Liam's grades. The guilt followed him into the new week. Mike noticed the tension and invited him for beers. "You can't keep everyone happy, man. At some point you have to choose you." The words echoed long after Henry got home. That night he wrote a letter he never sent, pouring out years of silent longing. The love he felt for Alexander that had nothing to do with shame and everything to do with finally feeling whole. He deleted it at dawn, but the act of writing had shifted something irreversible. Spring arrived with longer days and harder choices. Alexander's patience never wavered, but Henry could see the strain. They compromised. Family dinners at Alexander's apartment where Liam helped cook pasta and laughed at Alexander's terrible jokes. The three of them felt like a unit, fragile but real. Yet outside that bubble the world pushed back. Henry's parents announced a surprise visit for Easter. The night before they arrived, Henry paced his living room until Alexander gently took his hands. "Tell them when you're ready, or don't. But don't let fear decide." The next day, over ham and deviled eggs, his mother asked the inevitable question. "So, any special woman in your life?" Henry looked at Liam, then at the empty chair where Sarah used to sit, and the words came out before he could stop them. "Actually, there's someone. His name is Alexander." Silence crashed over the table. His father's fork clattered. His mother's face paled. "Henry, what are you saying?" The conversation that followed was painful and raw. Accusations of betrayal, worry about Liam, fears about what people will think. Liam listened quietly, then spoke up in a small voice. "I like Alex, Grandma. He's nice." The simple defense from his son broke Henry's heart and mended it at the same time. His parents left early, promising to pray about it. Henry sat on the couch afterward, Alexander beside him, and cried for the first time in years. The weeks after Easter brought more tests. A colleague confronted him in the parking garage, voice low and ugly. "Some of us don't want that kind of influence around our kids." Henry kept his job, but the atmosphere chilled. Alexander offered to step back if it made things easier. "No," Henry said fiercely. "I'm done hiding." They took a weekend trip to the Dells, just the two of them, and walked along the river talking about the future. Henry realized the man beside him wasn't just a lover. He was a partner, someone who saw the father, the widower, the scared man, and loved all of them. Back in Chicago, they attended a small pride event as allies first, then as themselves. Henry held Alexander's hand in public for the first time, heart pounding but free. Summer brought resolution wrapped in hard-won peace. Henry's parents called one humid evening, voices hesitant but warmer. "We love you," his mother said. "We just need time." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. At work, the whispers quieted after Henry refused to shrink. Liam thrived, bringing Alexander to every soccer game and proudly introducing him as "my dad's boyfriend." The word no longer terrified Henry. It grounded him. One quiet August evening on the same park bench where they had walked months earlier, Alexander turned to him. "Remember the first time I told you I loved you?" Henry smiled, the memory now soft instead of sharp. "I was terrified. Now I'm grateful." Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple silver band. "I don't need a big ceremony. I just need you, every version of you." Henry slipped the ring on, tears blurring the city lights. Yes, they sat in silence, hands linked, watching the sun set over Lake Michigan. The journey had been messy, full of misunderstandings and painful choices, but it had led them here, to a love that felt like coming home. True or false? Should a single father sacrifice his own happiness to shield his child from prejudice?